Well, she's here. Only took about a week after ordering, and freight truck called and said they would drop it off on Monday. And sure enough, first thing Monday morning, 3 boxes plus a bonus ball, I believe is what that is. So came in 3 boxes. We're gonna unpack and see what it's like. First box opened up. Looks like things are packed actually pretty well. Lots of good padding and styrofoam. Even though there's a tiny bit of damage to the outside of the box, I don't currently see any damage to the components inside. So that's a good sign. Comes with 2 instruction manuals, one in English, one in Spanish, which is nice. We're just going to be dealing with this one. Actually, pretty thick. So what I've heard is that this isn't a very good instruction manual. That's what I've read online. But it seems very thorough. And my goal is to finish reading it before I ever start doing assembly. So this thing is about 40 pages. And I will report back with peculiar things I might find inside. This part of the video, I decided to just voice over after the fact because the audio just wasn't great and there was probably more I needed to explain here. The first clip, installing the base and whatnot, was actually quite easy. The hard part starts when you're starting to assemble this column. So that's the center column. It's got a top and bottom part, and I kind of wish that Spalding would deliver that both assembled and just in a larger package, but they don't. As you can see, this is not a one-man job, and you really shouldn't take it on as a one-man job. It's quite dangerous to do that, and I was being an idiot here, trying to get it in. Those 2 pieces fit together super snugly, and that's what you're seeing here. I'm actually doing it not the right way. I ended up having to turn it around so the top part would be at the bottom and the bottom part would be at the top. I'll explain this a little later too, but this isn't the way to do it. You want to definitely turn it around, and you're going to end up slamming it into the ground, and not just gentle taps like I was doing. So it's gonna take some slams. That's why it's probably better to have 2 people around. That mallet that I grabbed really doesn't do anything. As you can see, it's just a comedy of errors, and it's amazing I didn't get hurt, and it's probably incredible that I didn't damage something in the process. So yeah, basically what you want to do is you want to get the thing just started, which is difficult enough to do, to get it just started. Make sure the front facing, the orientation of both sides is correct. Then you want to turn it upside down, and unfortunately I don't have that part on camera because at this point I'd almost given up getting this right by myself, and I went out to the front yard and got it done. So what you really want to do is turn it upside down, have somebody kind of help you get it started, and then just pick it up and start slamming it into the ground on a piece of board or something like that. You are going to damage the top a little bit, which isn't too bad. Don't worry about that. You can always just use some spray paint to fix that. Just take your time and use 2 people. Get a piece of board, put it on some concrete or a really hard surface. So don't do it on soil or grass or something like that. That's going to absorb too much of the shock. You want the shock to travel through the column in order to help you kind of join the 2 parts. This is not easy at all. There is, I'd read some horror stories about how much effort this takes, and it took even more than whatever I'd heard. So just don't try to be a hero and doing this as a one-man job. I regret doing that. I mean, it turned out okay, but really it was just a bad idea. So with that, I'm going to skip forward to the next step, but I will review this a little bit later in the video as well. Use 2 people. It's going to take a hell of a lot of force, more than you can ever imagine, and you need to be able to lift the thing up off the ground about 18 to 24 inches every time you want to slam it down. And each time you'll gain something like 1/4 of an inch, and you're trying to get it to travel something like 4 or 5 inches. So you're gonna have to slam it into the ground about 20 times at that really high amount of force. Really helps to sand the surfaces down as much as you can ahead of time. So get a sander, sand it down. I used an electric sander actually eventually. And as you can see here, I'm just being a total stooge and almost hurting myself several times. Don't do that. So use the sander and turn the thing upside down, and just use 2 people to try to smash it into the ground as hard as you can in order to get the bottom into the top. So the bottom goes into the top. When you have it inverted, the top is facing the bottom. I know that sounds a little confusing, but it'll make more sense once you're there, and you'll go from there. Okay, this is another one of the tricky parts. So I just assembled it. Sorry I didn't capture that on video, but it comes with this pad that actually has 6 holes. You end up using the 2 round holes and the 2 oval holes on the opposite sides. And the way I did it is I actually had the adhesive facing up first. I aligned it with the holes, and then I put the spacers on there. Then I turned it around and put it onto the thing. And then I affixed it to the glass. Before doing that though, I really cleaned the glass nicely. That water is actually condensation from underneath the glass. I cleaned the glass nicely with a glass cleaner because you want to make sure this adhesive sticks really good. And I gotta say, this pad is super sticky, so be careful as you're applying it that you don't touch it to other surfaces or anything like that, because it's going to be really difficult to get that off. I can't help but think this is something that could have just been done at the factory and shipped this way, because I think it would have made a lot more sense. The room for error here is really large, and you could ruin the entire set by not getting this right now. And that's you can see I've aligned the holes so that they're more or less centered on those holes, so the spacers are aligned. Yeah, so this was tricky. It wasn't too clear how you're supposed to do this just from the directions. I mean, kind of clear, but not really. Like this pad shows that there's only 4 holes and they're all round. This is not the case here, and so yeah, but worked out. Now the trick is, how am I going to get this thing onto that thing? I'll figure it out. So I've been trying to figure out a one-man way of installing the backboard. The instructions say stand the unit upright. I guess it doesn't say, but you need at least 3 people to do that, to hold each side of the backboard, while the other one magically, using a 3rd ladder, would install the support pieces into it, the upper support pieces. So what I've done is I've actually tilted it over again, which was not easy to do because now the base is half full with water. So I don't recommend, maybe do like a 1/3 full with water, because you do want some weight there, just to keep it nice and stable. I've set up my sawhorse such that the height is nearly good. I'm going to do the back support first, and what I've got, which you may not have, but these are cheap on Amazon, I've got these little airbags, and I've got one underneath here, as you can see, and I'm using the airbag to just set the height perfect for myself. And when I get to the other side, first I'm going to do this side. When I get to the other side, then I will prop up the other end with some wood, and then still use the airbag trick to align it perfectly while I install the back. I'm hoping this will all work. It's hard to say if it will, but yeah, that's where I am right now. Wish me luck. Turns out with 2 people, that was not that hard at all. We got it up. Nice. Just had to lift the stem up. Not a big deal at all. One person is really difficult. You just need 2 relatively strong people. So it is done. I can't believe it. I can't believe it's finally finished. There's still a lot of work to do. I got to put the rim and whatnot, but I have to believe the hard part is over, for God's sake. All right. So one thing to note about this kit is there are no extra parts. If you have left some extra parts at the end, which I do, it's because you've made a mistake. But I don't think it's a tremendous mistake. It could be. I've got 4 B2 washers left, and it turns out here on the instructions, before you put the big column in, you're supposed to slide 4 washers just onto the bolts before the unit goes in, and then another 4 washers on top of that. So I didn't put the ones below it, but there's 0 chance I'm gonna get to that ever again. I'd have to unassemble the whole thing just to get to that, and I can't imagine that makes a huge difference. But it might. Those parts are there for a reason. It's probably to allow you to kind of wrench down on it a little bit harder to kind of give it more of a compressed metal surface. I don't believe that's going to make a really big difference. But just so you know, and you won't make the same mistake, read this step 1 more carefully on page 15. The diagram wasn't that obvious. It's a little bit more obvious now, but these 4 are the ones you slide on, and those 4 are the ones you do after you put that on. That's too bad, because I've done everything else just perfectly so far. And it's a shame that didn't go on right. I knew that there was something weird once I saw those 4 washers left, and I went through the directions several times before I found that problem. I'm not going to worry about it. It's just something I'll have to live with. Okay, one last thing. Maybe one last thing. If putting the net it seems really hard, it's probably because you're doing it wrong or you're overthinking it. Here's how it's done. At the end, it just simply slips on top of here. I'm doing it one-handed so I can film this. Then you want to slide in something kind of behind it just to push it over. And that's it. That's all you got to do. Make sure you're using the long end of the net, not the short end of the net like I was doing at first. Anyway, you'll make a lot of mistakes, but this part is actually quite simple. It looks really hard, but it's super simple. I don't have the water tanks full just quite yet, and it seems super sturdy even now. I'm going to fill them up, obviously. I've raised it up to a pretty decent height. I don't think this is the top. This is probably where I would want to play with my boy. Maybe a little lower even. And it seems pretty damn sturdy. So there is a little bit of a question about how tight you're supposed to make these lock nuts. It says tighten them so that the outside is flush with the outer edge of the nut, which is what I've done there. If you can see, so the bolt is now flush with, just past flush with the outer edge of the nut. And I think that's what the directions mean to say. I can't be sure though, because they don't illustrate it, and I've never heard the terms used the way they use them. So it's hard to say. I could probably go a little bit more on that guy, even though that's technically flush. Man, the zoom is awesome on this phone. I'm doing this whole thing on my iPhone 13 Pro. I didn't do a good job with audio, and honestly, I really wanted to make a thorough instruction video. But once I hit that column problem, man, I almost gave up on this thing. I almost thought I'd have to wait. And I went into the front yard and started bashing on this thing and finally got it on. So that's where the kind of the videoing of the whole thing kind of fell apart. But hopefully I've given you enough to assemble the thing. One more thing I wanted to mention. There is no extra parts. If you're left with anything at the end, it's your fault. Just like I said, I was left with these 4 washers at the end, and I had to go through the instructions like 4 or 5 times to see what that was about. So knowing that there's no extra parts, okay, don't ruin your parts, don't over tighten them, don't lose them. But the other clue for you is, as you go through the instructions here, let me grab this because this is important. As you go through the instructions, at the very beginning of the book, there is it shows you all the different parts, right? So each one of these kits is one bag. Okay, this is one bag, that's another bag, this is another bag, that's another bag, another bag, another bag. Well, that's not technically a bag. Let's see, bag, and that's it. Okay, so the reason I go through that is because these letters and numbers don't mean anything when you look at the bags, okay? But it'll help you identify which bag you're dealing with, which is actually all you really need. So it would have been nice if they'd done the correct lettering and whatnot, but I couldn't make any sense of their lettering. They could have at least said, you know, bag number or whatever, but they didn't.
Could you say that again?
Sorry. But anyway, that's how you identify which bag you're dealing with. I think that should be a helpful enough tip. And I showed you the bit with the foam and how I did that. I think I did it correctly. So that's the foam in place now. And the last thing I have to do is just put the cover back on there, which I'm not going to do until I play with it a little bit to make sure I like the tightness of the rim. All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna put this aside for now and maybe do some videos of me missing some shots. All right, here we go. First attempt. Very little drama. I mean, let's try to smash the backboard really hard. Almost got myself. So, as you can see, it is a pretty sturdy unit. It looks really great, and love the glass. Obviously, I don't have it at its highest point or anything. And the adjustment up and down, it's not super easy, but it's not super hard. You need an adult to do it, I would think. It takes some strength. Not a lot, but I definitely think that it's worth the money that you pay for it. I don't know if it's worth the effort you spend to install it. I feel like some additional parts could come pre-installed. If I was Spalding, I would maybe make the entire column a single unit or pre-assemble it to get delivered. Everything is very large anyway. What's another large, awkward package? That would, I think, really change the perception of this entire setup. I would probably do that. I would install the foam pad thing onto the backboard to begin with, and a couple other parts perhaps, but not a lot more that can be done that way. And I think that would really increase like the overall satisfaction, especially in the install process. If you're not handy, I wouldn't start this alone. It I would highly recommend, after having done this, and I'd say probably a couple hours today, 3 hours yesterday, maybe a total of 5 hours, and you saw how much I had to struggle with some parts of this. I would highly recommend 2, even 3 people, even 4 people would not be a waste of manpower, especially when it comes to the first half of the install. If you're gonna lift the backboard with ladders to go up, you're definitely gonna need at least 3 to 4 people. I would recommend 4. I highly recommend doing it my way. I think that was a much less dangerous in a much more kind of manageable way, especially to do it single-handedly. Like I said, my wife did have to help me give it a little bit of extra lift at the end. I'm perfectly capable of lifting about 150 pounds, and I can tell you that the force required to do that was well over that. It was probably closer to 200 some odd pounds. If you can clean like 250 or so, I'd say you could probably do this, no problem. But there's no sense. Just get an extra person. Like I said, my wife was enough to help get it up, and she's not very strong, and she does not like lifting heavy things. So even like having her help was enough. But yeah, hopefully this has helped you. I know this is going to help you because there was no other video out there that would help with the install of this unit. And I apologize to everyone for not having a step-by-step install. But I feel like the book actually did a decent job going through everything, except for the parts that I've called out in this video. I wish I could drive home how difficult it is to get that top and bottom piece together. You're gonna want to give up. Having 2 people is just barely any help. It's just the thing weighs a lot. You have to lift it and smash it together several times. It's dangerous. It's awkward. It's something I wish Spalding would figure out a way around that. But other than that, you know, the rest of it is relatively manageable. And the end result is certainly really, really great. I haven't even filled out the base completely with water. It's probably about 3/4 of the way, and it's super stable. I'm gonna obviously fill it all the way. I just couldn't wait to take my first couple shots. All right, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and hopefully it was somewhat helpful to you. And leave a comment in the description if you have any questions. I'll be more than happy to answer it. I usually get to questions pretty quickly. Again, enjoy your beast Spalding basketball court.